Well, welcome back everybody to another episode of Automotive Drama. Today I kind of want to show you how to set the timing belt on an Acura MDX with a 3.7 liter. Now I've already got the tensioner on there. As you can see, I still haven't pulled the release on the tensioner yet. See it right there? Now once you put this belt on, you have enough tension where you can actually spin the motor over, and you have to spin the crank twice. You can see I still have my socket on there. And you see how I did that? I put the nut for the crank on there, and then or the bolt for the crank, and then I put a big nut behind it so I'm able to turn it. You can also put the balancer cover back on there, but I really don't need to, because there is a mark for the crank on the bottom. Now I've already spun this motor over, and here's the mark. Right here's the mark for the cam gear. And there's the mark on the housing. See, can you see it right there? Now if you look, those babies are dead in line. There is a number 1. See that number 1? That has to be up, because otherwise you'll be 180 out. There is a mark on the other side of that, and you'll be 180 degrees out. And you really don't want to do that. You'll have spring tension on the camshaft gears and from the cams or from the valves, and it'll spin. It'll be a real nightmare. So make sure you get that top dead center. Down here, you can see plain and simply there's a mark there. There's a little tiny arrow on that gear. I really can't get the camera in there, but as you can see, I made a white mark above it, and then there is also a mark, another arrow on the block, or actually that's the oil pump housing, right there, and they're dead on too. And this is after I spun the motor over twice. Like I said, I still haven't put the tension on it, because there is enough tension to spin it if you spin it slowly. Now the back one, that's a little bit more tricky, because it's kind of hard to see. But as you can see, I took an apparatus, straight edge apparatus, and there's the mark there, and then I ran it straight across. Hang on, let me do this. Let me set the camera. I can't do it looking through the camera. And if you look, there's a mark there. I can't get the camera in there. See the mark there? There it is. It's really hard to get the camera in there. But if you look down in there, there's a tooth, right? And if you look deep inside there, there we go. There's also a line, and that line is dead on this tooth. But it's really hard to see, so I use my apparatus, and it comes out. See how straight it is? That's how I know. You can actually see in there where the tooth is. Yeah. It's kind of tricky. The trick to this is, when you're putting this belt on, you want to wrap it as tightly as you can around this side of the cam and around this idler, and then bring it as tightly as you can around the crank, because you want all the slack from the belt to be on the tensioner side. In this case, I was a half a tooth off on the crank with the belt, so I actually spun the crank back a little bit so I had enough slack, and I slipped the belt over. That was before I put the tensioner back on it, and I still haven't popped it, but I just put it back on to hold it. And that was so I could spin the motor. And I still had enough, but before I did that, I had enough tension where I actually spun the motor back and was able to line up the bottom of the crank gear. And when I spun it back over, there was a ton of tension on this side, and it was really slacky over here, which is what you like. Because if you got a bunch of slack over here, when you go to tighten this thing up, you're gonna have slack in there, and you'll end up being a tooth off if you don't get the slack out to begin with. It's I guess that's kind of easy to explain, because you'll see if you get there. You'll go to pull this baby tight, and it'll be like half a tooth off. So I just moved the crank back, got it in line, and then when I pulled it back to the mark, it pulled all the tension on that side of the belt and brought all the slack to the tensioner side. And then when I was able to get it in on one shot, and I didn't have to do it twice. yeah, sometimes it don't work like that, and you have to do it anyways twice. But make sure you spin that motor over twice, because if you don't, I think this is a non-interference motor, but it won't run right if you don't get those marks together where they're supposed to be. Anyways, like always, likes are nice, subscribes are better. Questions, comments, feel free. If you've watched this far, you could take and exercise that thumb muscle and hit the like, subscribe button, ring the bell, and watch more videos if you want. If you don't, that's cool too. Anyways, have a good day, my friends, and stay tuned for more episodes.